Hey, Morgan.
Hey, Megan.
I think I've got some questions for you about technology.
Oh,
Do you want to talk about technology?
Yes.
So when you hear technology, what do you think of?
Sci-fi, like, what are those people called? Like artificial intelligence people. Gosh, I'm so bad. I don't know any of these terms. They're
Me
like,
neither. I was hoping you did.
I just think of like these, kind of crazy, like sci-fi, like,
Okay.
technology is like going to make the world so crazy.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Like the people that are altered by like techie machine type things.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Got it. Okay. Honestly, when I think of technology, I think of video games.
Okay.
I don't know why.
Yeah.
I think of like back in the day when I was a little kid and I played video games. Like that's when I think like what I think of.
Yeah. Yeah.
Technology. I don't really know why. There's so many forms of technology.
It's true.
There's iPads and iPhones and computers and artificial intelligence and, drones, things that hover in the air now.
We saw that little thing on the way here.
Oh my gosh.
It's this little drone that
Whoa.
delivers food. We were really freaked out. I've never seen that.
What is that thing on the sidewalk?
It was like a little, like from Star Wars, like R2-D2.
R2-D2.
Creature
delivering
going around.
Food on a college campus nearby.
Super creepy.
It was interesting, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about what piece of technology we couldn't live without.
Okay. Okay, that's good. I would say YouTube.
YouTube, okay.
Yeah.
You need your YouTube.
Yeah. I love YouTube. It's just how I like blow off steam, which is bad. It's a bad habit of mine. But I'll just kind of watch. Sometimes they're good videos, sometimes like really educational videos, but sometimes just like makeup tutorials. I'm really a big sucker for that.
I'm a fan of YouTube as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. I frequent homesteading vlogs, which is a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is fun.
Learn about
That's the thing, like
how to sustain life on your land. It's fun.
Yeah, that's cool.
Maybe I'll do it someday. But it's fun to learn now.
That's cool. I should watch that. I would like that.
Open your crops, open up your crops to Christ. Do not be afraid.
We want to continue with some announcements. We want to invite you to join the AWAKEN Nation. The AWAKEN Nation is a group of donors that make this show and this ministry possible here at AWAKEN Catholic. All it takes is a monthly donation, and you can get exclusive access to special content on AWAKEN Catholic's website. To do that, go to awakencatholic.org/donate.
And we would like to invite you to download the AWAKEN app. The AWAKEN app, speaking of social media, is like a social media alternative. So you can chat with people within the AWAKEN community, including show hosts like Megan and myself. You have access to prayers. You have access to a shop, events, all sorts of cool things. So you can download that at theawakenapp.io.
And now a word from our sponsors.
Have you ever dreamed of visiting Paris in the fall? Seeing the beautiful Eiffel Tower lit up by a sunset? Visiting and venerating holy locations of the Sister Saints of France in Lisieux, Paris, Lourdes, and more? This fall 2021, join Select International Tours with Claire Swinarski from The Catholic Feminist, author and speaker Catherine Whitaker, and our amazing host Morgan Holliger and Megan Burwell from Awaken's show Naked Without Shame on a once-in-a-lifetime Seine River Cruise pilgrimage. Join our friends at Select International Tours and Cruises. With over 34 years of experience, they are the perfect company to help you experience pilgrimage. To learn more, visit selectinternationaltours.com/awaken. Bon voyage!
We are excited to be going on this cruise in October in France, and we welcome any of you to consider coming. I think it's going to be a good time. So
Yes,
yeah.
Absolutely. And it's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
Like I've said before, my favorite saints,
Yes.
Therese, Joan of Arc, Bernadette, amazing. So.
Yeah. Okay, so today we are going to be talking about, we think is super interesting.
Yes.
Super interesting to think about, really interesting perspective on technology, and more than just the things of technology, but what influences technology in our culture, in our world, the development of all these new gadgets, these new things. And we want to talk about particularly how we got to come to all this stuff, you know, and how, in a way, it can influence our understanding of ourselves.
Right.
Have you ever thought of that?
Yeah.
Does technology have an influence on how we see ourselves? You know?
And I think also we want to just to kind of like illustrate maybe a little better how this relates to theology of the body, which is something that we definitely think it does, maybe even if it doesn't immediately seem like it does. But yeah, we're going to look at it through the lens of this problem of contraception. And maybe this is a sort of foreign concept for people. I don't know. It was for me before I went to the John Paul II Institute. But how the problem of contraception we're going to propose is actually a problem of having a technological mindset. So it's deeper than just a sort of moral issue, but it's within this sort of worldview that's become, sort of all encompassing in the past. Gosh, I mean, really, 100 years in a very intense way, but for, hundreds and hundreds of years now. Yeah.
So. Yeah. This, the development of all these gadgets and things happened, right? Like you're saying, in a progression of a change in thought about what things are. Machines make our lives easier. Computers make our lives easier. We can access so much information,
right?
Different people.
Yeah.
Appliances in our kitchens, cars. Right. All these things make life a little bit easier. What
we're going to propose in this episode is that technology, you can't just reduce technology to these gadgets, right? I mean, even though that is, part of its definition, but it's also like a way to be technological is also a way of being in reality.
Let's then dive into our debate then about contraception and a technological worldview. So what is contraception? Can we say just briefly what the Catholic Church teaches on contraception, what it is, and maybe why? Yeah. Why the church has a stance about it?
Yeah. This goes back, to the very earliest centuries of the church. I mean, the church fathers, you can find throughout the church fathers these condemnations of contraceptive activities, which did date back to that time. It's not totally a new phenomenon, but as we're kind of gonna get into, it was never as widespread or as sort of part of this sort of norm of the culture. It was kind of like more of this fringe activity, at least to some extent. But yeah, so contraception essentially is the artificial means of repressing birth. Repressing conception. Contraception. Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. That's my definition. Okay. I don't know if you have a better one or anything to add to that.
No. Just that in, the theology of the body is really crucial actually for the whole, unfolding of the church's teaching on contraception.
Yes.
Too.
Yeah.
Because when the document Humanae Vitae came out in the 1960s, I want to say, it went through what the church said about the use of repressing birth, contraception. What John Paul II offers and really is responding to in the theology of the body is the anthropology behind why the Catholic Church says that the use of contraception for any reason at any time is not right.
Yeah. I think that, Pope Paul VI in Humanae Vitae, really, and it's really interesting because it was I remember learning in class at the Institute, everyone in the church thought that the church was going to support contraception. Like everyone thought that Pope Paul VI was going to write in affirming basically contraception. It's like, yeah, like, get with the times. Like we're in the 20th century now. Like this is just, come on, like obvious, do this.
Yeah.
And then Pope Paul VI said no. And people were just shocked. I mean, it took decades to kind of recover, and we still have definitely not recovered as a church. But anyway, Pope John Paul II, he really wants to affirm what Pope Paul VI wrote, but he really, I think, was inspired to develop an entire anthropology to support these sort of more moral claims that Pope Paul VI was making. That are in alignment, like we were saying, with the whole teaching of the church. The church has always, come down against contraception as something that is really inherently wrong. But yeah, John Paul II really saw the need to spell out why, because he saw that this is just so, the culture, modern culture just does not understand this. It just seems like this archaic, medieval, totally arbitrary thing. And I think that's a lot of the reason why he develops this anthropology and theology of the body. Yeah,
exactly. It brings us back actually to an understanding of, once again, the human person, and that a human person has a nature, maybe, so to say.
Yeah, exactly.
That it's not so crazy when you realize how the human person is meant to be and act and function, the purpose of the human person, the nature of the human person, right? And so what was happening hundreds of years ago in this shift of thought, which is what we're saying, it's like more than a moral issue of the contraception issue. It's more of like this understanding of what reality is and what I can do with reality, what I can do to myself, hundreds of years ago, this is forming this understanding of, okay, man is creating all these things, but he has to do it by kind of getting rid of nature, that things have a nature. Do you know what I mean by that when I say things have a nature?
I think so. Okay. But what do you mean by that?
Okay.
Say more.
Yes. Okay. I think I was alluding to it, but I just want to emphasize that, the created things of this world, created by God, have a purpose and an end.
Okay, that would be the definition of nature.
Yes.
Things having a purpose and an end.
Yes.
They're created by God, and they have, we would say all the time at the Institute, it's just like a philosophical term, Greek, I think. Telos, they have a telos.
Oh, yes.
Right.
Yes, an end, sure. Yeah.
An end. So, the world is, like we would always say, teleological. Like that things have natures, they have ends. They're not just kind of, so this is kind of what you're talking about in the shift in modernity. There was a shift away from seeing things as having this inherent meaning within themselves, basically.
Yes.
And moving towards, I make the meaning of things. I can take, this, whatever it is, rock, and manipulate it and control it and extract from it or whatever and make it into whatever I want. And that doesn't have to be in harmony with the truth of the rock, basically. Like there is no truth of the rock. Like who cares? It's just whatever I can do with it.
How about a purpose of a tree?
Yeah, that's easier.
Let's talk about a purpose of the tree. Like what is the nature of a tree?
Yeah, the nature of a tree.
We're going to get to contraception eventually, don't worry.
We're going to go first to trees and then we're going to work up.
We're going to work up the people.
I think the purpose of a tree is to be a healthy, flourishing tree.
Yeah.
Like to embody, another thing we would always say at the Institute, like treeness, the essence of tree. That is the nature of a tree. So it's not to, and that doesn't mean that, we can't cut down a tree and make a house out of it. That's not to say that, we can't somehow use nature in a certain sense. The difference between using a tree to build a house and cutting down an entire ecosystem of trees to create, I don't know, paper or something, whatever we want, that like so damages the environment and so kind of goes against the nature of this
The tree.
ecosystem, and then goes against the nature of the tree. Is that making sense?
Yeah. Like the nature of a tree is also its purpose it provides shade, and it provides a habitat for animals and people.
Yeah.
And it reproduces itself. It can grow more trees too.
Yeah. Yeah.
That kind of thing too.
Yeah. So to like abuse it, or to like, again, it's not that you can't like, use a tree for like whatever purposes.
Yeah.
But like I think that the thing where it becomes technological is you kind of abuse nature and totally kind of contradict any inherent meaning that it might have within it, as opposed to working with it and affirming it somehow. And these things, it might seem kind of vague, or kind of like, this sounds kind of like hippy dippy. Like, what are they talking about? Like honoring the essence of a tree. Like, all right. But bear with us, because it has a lot of implications for like things like we're going to talk about with the human body, for instance. I mean,
exactly.
That these things are, we more intuit that these things are like extremely important. Like you can't abuse the body and go against the nature of the body. But as we're kind of, seeing, and we're going to go into more, like that as a culture, and our cultural trend is to do those things, is to say the body has no meaning, is to whatever.
Right.
So, I mean,
eradicate nature.
I think what we're going to try to say is like, if we can't say the tree has meaning, we kind of lose our basis for saying the body has meaning. Nature has to have a meaning.
You. Yeah, you. You know you've always wanted to go to Paris. Well, now's your chance. If you go with Select International Tours, the sponsor of today's Awaken Catholic Show episode, you can join Claire Swinarski from the Catholic Feminist podcast, as well as author and speaker Catherine Whitaker, and our amazing hosts Morgan Holliger and Megan Burwell from Awaken's show Naked Without Shame, on a once-in-a-lifetime Seine River cruise pilgrimage in France. Visit and venerate the sister saints of France in Lisieux, Paris, Lourdes, and more. Sacre bleu! Learn more by visiting selectinternationaltours.com/awaken.
We've been talking about a lot of good and interesting things. Let's just summarize real fast.
Okay.
So the point of our talk is to talk about contraception, where it kind of came from, where it came out of in light of a technological mindset and worldview. We talked about things having natures or purposes in and of themselves given by God. I also want to add, though, that created things have natures too. Like the nature of, let's say, a tool like a pair of scissors is to cut something, right? The nature or purpose of a lawnmower is to mow a lawn. So even things that man creates still have a nature or purpose to them. One thing I want to add in light of that point is that the problem with, I guess, this newly developed like technological worldview is not that it's bad to create things.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
We want to emphasize that too. It's to be creative, to take something and turn it into something useful or beautiful, like can be very good and fulfilling to man.
Yeah, absolutely.
To create art.
Yeah.
The word techne from technology, techne actually means art or skill.
Yeah. Right. Right.
And that's a given gift by God, a given ability by God. Those are good things for humanity.
Yeah. 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 Very important disclaimer.
Very
and
important.
God says, in Genesis, like, you have dominion over the earth, right?
Yeah.
And
exactly.
so it's not a problem of man. And I think that, in our culture, like sort of there is this tendency and this kind of extreme of like this environmentalism of like, that, man should just like not touch the world. Like it actually maybe is better that if man were not like around actually, because the man just like messes up the world. Well, I'm sympathetic to like, yeah, we are kind of messing up the world. I think that's too extreme. It's not to say that, we just shouldn't at all be able to kind of be in the world and like you're saying, be creative in the world and use things and kind of, make things out of things. Yeah, like that's exactly. Not the problem, but but what is the problem is this kind of like what we're kind of trying to get at here, like this technological mindset in doing that, and that ignores the nature of things and ignores the dignity of things, and just says, I'm going to do whatever I want.
Right.
I'm going to manipulate. I'm going to control, totally ignoring what these things are, basically.
Yeah. 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 You use the words like manipulate and control.
Yeah.
So there is a sense of losing the call by God to have dominion. And now we are transitioning into like dominating more. There's like a step to a violence or a domination.
Yeah, a violence, exactly.
Of nature.
Yeah. Yeah.
Once again, with the disclaimer that it's good to be creative, but it's a way of thinking about these things that, yes, to ignore something's natural purpose is to do violence to it in a sense.
Yeah.
You know? So we're like pro-respecting the natures of things.
Yes. Yeah.
And that is I believe a Christian, like a part of a Christian worldview.
Yeah.
Actually,
Which is also often like very much not affirmed. I mean, like how many times do you hear in the culture that like Christianity, I mean, I remember I used to hear this all the time at school where I went to undergrad, which was like a public university. But basically Christianity is responsible for this kind of like domineering, kind of controlling way of viewing nature. That's very, very prevalent. And I think that, that's just simply like a misconception. I think that, and there is potentially some truth in it. Like, I think that there was a certain sort of strand of Protestantism that did kind of ignore kind of got rid of this understanding of the goodness of nature, the inherent goodness of nature. This is kind of like Puritanism, like we've talked about before in one of our talks. Which one? The first one? The body image one. But yeah, this sort of like, nature is bad. Nature is inherently corrupt. So we can kind of do whatever we want with it. I think that is kind of at play in the technological, like what we're talking about, this like sort of shift towards a technological worldview. But I don't think that's Christianity in its essence. I think in fact, very much the opposite. I think Christianity is, it's inherent to Christianity to affirm the goodness of creation, and absolutely necessary and inherent.
Yes. Right. To say that it's bad is just not true.
Yeah. It's to kind of cast doubt on the creator, the goodness of the creator.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's God created creation. And so it must be good.
It must be.
It must be good.
Yeah.
And so it must be dealt with respect and with honor.
Yeah. And really, when you do that, when we treat the things of nature and treat ourselves in the order and design that God intends, we flourish.
Yes.
You know, we flourish.
Yeah.
Quite literally, when we aren't using contraception in relationships, we literally flourish. Like life happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, in a real way. Like it's good for man to be fruitful, to have children, you know, and see those children as a gift.
Right. Right.
It's good to work with nature to like grow food, you know, or to whatever. Yeah.
And, you know, there's ways that there's like certain farming techniques that can kind of like cultivate the earth better and, you know, bring forth what's already there present within it. And that's not bad. I mean, that's great.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how we should treat all things in nature, like our bodies definitely included. Like we can, you know, medicine is great and like all these things like that, that's beautiful and like incredible. And, you know, in a lot of ways, modern technology is very beautiful in that sense. And like what all the things that we've been able to do to like really helping the body flourish.
Yeah.
And so it's not to just cast out totally on modernity and technology and say that it's all evil. Like that's definitely not the case. And in so many ways, like so thankful for these things.
Oh yeah.
But it is to question a kind of trend and mindset that goes against what we're talking about with this flourishing, basically this cultivating of nature and kind of taking what's there and affirming that. But actually like you were saying, like does violence. There's this trend to sort of do violence against the body for our own manipulation, our own control, and do violence against nature, or just do violence. And I think that's what the essence of what we're saying is the technological mindset.
Yeah. That's great.
And like what you were saying, like that's at play in contraception. That I have decided that I want to not have kids for whatever reason, and I still want to have sex and the pleasure that comes with sex. And so I'm going to manipulate somehow the body, whether it's like, whatever method you use. But in some way, this is kind of doing violence against the inherent purpose and dignity of the sexual act, and the inherent meaning of the sexual act. The meaning of the sexual act is I give myself totally to this other person in total abandon, total love. And that's what's being communicated. I mean, that is like we're talking about with natures. That is the nature of this action.
And I cannot change that nature.
Yeah. And if I do change that nature, it's going to obscure the meaning. It's going to mean something totally different. It's going to mean, actually, I don't want totally all of you, and I don't want to give all myself. I want only the pleasure. And whether we think, that or not when we're doing it, most of the time we're not thinking that. I mean, this is not at all to condemn anyone that's that uses contraception or has used contraception. I mean, this is sort of just, again, this is throughout our culture. It is. And it's in the air we breathe, and it's just so much like I'm saying, a no-brainer. But I mean, we want to say that whether we think it or not, or whether we intend it or not, to use contraception is to do violence against the sexual act in some way. It's this inherent kind of corruption of it. And it's like we were saying about its inherent meaning.
I think as you were talking about like helping things flourish too, as we were both talking about that, I thought would be a good segue into explaining the difference between contraception and natural family planning a little bit.
Yeah, this is a really good.
Want. Yeah.
I think that a lot of people really struggle to articulate this, even within the Catholic world. I remember back in our Theology of the Body TOB Tuesday days, I remember like really struggling to like, what is the difference between contraception and NFP? Because I mean, in this very kind of like, in the simple way, like both are doing the same thing. Both are preventing birth. And so the church does not say that we have to always, I mean, we just like should just totally indiscriminately have children. Like we can use our prudence and say like there are times when having children would not be the best thing. But the church does say that there's like a sort of way of doing that respects the dignity of the act in a way that doesn't. But anyway, I think in the church, we've really struggled to articulate this difference. And I remember one just anecdote. I was at this talk at a college campus, and there was these two theology professors, and I forgot what the actual talk was about, but they were giving a talk. And then there was a Q&A, and someone asked this question, like, what's the difference between NFP and contraception? And both the professors were incredibly smart people. And yeah, just like, some of the top, in their field, like just great minds. But they could not answer this question, at least in my judgment. Like they just could not answer this question. They kept kind of dancing around it. And then it was very interesting because there was this guy there that was like very much another professor that was very much like formed by the Institute. And it was really interesting for me because I saw that he was the only person that could begin to arrive at an answer, basically, to this question.
What did he say? I mean, how was it different?
Yeah. It was kind of like, I think what I've been alluding to, like it's the meaning, the inherent meaning of the bodily act. So it's not just a matter of what I intend or what the end result would be in judging sort of the morality of these actions, but it's what is the meaning of the act? And that also like implies what is the meaning of the body? Like what is the nature? Exactly. Mm-hmm. And if you can't use that language, you're really going to struggle to affirm this church teaching. And so I think it's very important to kind of understand that like in NFP, you're respecting the dignity the intrinsic dignity and integrity of the sexual act that, like we were saying, communicates something. It communicates what it means to love. What it means to love is to totally give yourself. And that means, body and soul. That means the whole of your person. Like we said in our first talk, on body image, like the body is inherent to the person. It's not just this like tool that I have, or this kind of like whatever, this machine that I'm kind of like the ghost in the machine thing, So I think just to kind of conclude, the point is that while NFP and contraception might on the surface seem like the same, like both are preventing birth, like one is kind of like what we're trying to get at. Like one is technological, one is manipulating and trying to control the body and go against the nature of the body and the nature of the sexual act. And for my own sort of purposes.
Yes.
As opposed to NFP, which also prevents birth, but does so in such a way that honors and respects the nature of the human body, the nature of the act of sex, and the nature of the woman's body too. And that there are certain times of the month that the woman is naturally infertile, and to sort of recognize that and act based on that. If you have, good reason like that, there's nothing wrong with it. There's something actually that's really honoring and respecting the dignity of the woman's body in doing that.
Yeah.
So
that's great. I like how you said that. I thought that's a really good summary. I like that a lot.
Thanks.
Yeah. To see the difference as one being kind of from this technological worldview and another one being from a sacramental worldview.
Yeah.
Just knowing that the sacramental worldview is precisely what the theology of the body promotes, to see things from God in order and a design from God, and living according to that for our flourishing. Like we
so
said.
you'd say that's a sacramental worldview, that it's seeing things as given by God and as a sign of God.
Yeah.
So in that sense, they're signs, they're sacraments.
Yeah.
Not sacraments with like a capital S, but sacraments in sort of the more general sense, right?
Yeah. Good way to explain that. That was really good.
Thanks.
So,
I try. I did study this stuff. It's sometimes a little heady or a little hard to kind of, but yeah.
No, it's good to just share and talk about it and yeah. But I am really glad we talked about this, because hopefully this will allow our listeners who, are curious as to why the church says what she does on the issue of contraception. Hopefully there's more insight into where this really comes from. Yeah. This logic.
Yeah.
When I overhear people talking about contraception so normally and naturally, I think, this is kind of just where we are as a culture. And I don't, I just kind of accept that this is a logic.
This is how we see reality.
This is how we see reality.
The world doesn't mean anything. Things in the world don't mean things. And so I can kind of do what I want with nature. And it doesn't matter.
Yeah. And ultimately, like you were saying, to like make things easier for us, but also to avoid suffering.
Yeah. I think that's a really good kind of like maybe final point. Is like, what is behind this impulse to control nature? I mean, like some of it's like, again, like we're saying, like a kind of good and natural thing to want to improve nature and, whatever, make progress, like all
make
these things
efficient.
Yeah.
Make things, more
and
efficient.
That's not bad. But what is this kind of like to do that in a way that's abusive and like what we're saying, like domineering, like what do you think is at the heart of that?
Yeah.
Because that wasn't always the case. I mean, I think that prior to modern culture, like people, like we were saying, had techne. People worked with nature and things in the creative world, and like they were creative with them. They made boats and houses and whatever they made. But like what kind of happened when people started, like we're kind of trying to say, shifting towards this technological mindset? Why do you think that? Why do you think that was the case? Yeah.
Well, just off the top of my head, I do think the piece about suffering is really important to recognize.
Yeah.
That I can actually become free from the chains that nature has on me in my suffering. Nature, there is difficulty living in this world in nature.
Yeah.
There's natural disasters. There is suffering for the human person. There's death. one of the purposes, I think, or discoveries of, when I dominate nature, my suffering is lessened. Things become easier for me. Like the example with contraception, my suffering is less because I don't have to sacrifice so much, you know? And I guess too, it just makes me think of my time studying biotechnology too, and just how this movement towards kind of changing the nature of the human person really is an effort to avoid suffering.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
I would love to talk about some more of these like biotechnical topics, life topics in other episodes. I think it'd be really fun to continue the conversation about this technological worldview.
I agree.
And then see it in light of other topics other than contraception. We could name some other things and share.
Tons of other things. Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
I think that'd be great.
I think it'd be great too. So good to talk to you, Morgan.
Yeah, good to talk to you too, Megan.
Okay, we'll wrap it up.
All right.
Thank you for listening in on our conversation today. We hope you took something away from our content and really begin to see what we're trying to talk about with this new logic, this technological logic. Remember, you are good and you are gifts, and we'll talk to you next time.
This show and all media on Awaken Catholic is made possible by the Awaken Nation and the Hallow app. The Awaken Nation is a community of people like you who support all things Awaken for as cheap as a cup of coffee a week and get access to exclusive content. Learn more by visiting awakencatholic.org/donate. Hallow is the only audio-guided Catholic prayer app focused on contemplative prayer and traditional Catholic meditation such as Lectio Divina, Daily Examen, and the Rosary. We here at Awaken all use Hallow every day and love it. To learn more or give it a try, visit hallow.app/awaken.